If there is one thing you can always expect from a Yakuza game, it's an OST collection that will take you on quite the journey. Most notably with the various final boss themes we got and praised over time. Roughly 1 year ago on this channel, I've done a video deconstructing one such track, the song called Fly from Yakuza 3. And much like with that project, today's piece will once again be based on a track that served as both the opener and the final boss theme for the game it was bound to. It's time to give some deserved praise to the ever so memed on, yet comparably epic, For Faith, one of the most legendary positives to have come from 2010's Yakuza 4. As you may have expected, considering we will be discussing the final boss theme of this game at length, this video will feature an exceptional amount of spoilers for Yakuza 4, so I'd urge you to play this game for yourselves if you haven't already, and then join in for today's discussion. So, with all of that out of the way, let's begin. For Faith is another song composed by series veteran Hidenari Shoji, yet the emotions this one instills take a different form than those stemming from Fly did. While both tracks are highly energetic in the chorus, For Faith is a significantly simpler composition in structure. Starting with the intro, it features a lead melody that invokes an anthemic feel in the listener. Like, literally, I could see this playing for a national football team at a World Cup, and it would absolutely fit. This section doesn't explode into the rest of the track like a number of other Shoji compositions would, but rather, the intro starts the steady build of intensity that persists through most of the track, until the outro eventually resets it. Despite initially sounding like a softer take on the established basis, the verse section that follows manages to maintain the required energy, thanks to the drum arrangements remaining the same as before, and due to the rest of the instrumental being driven by more atmospheric piano and string arrangements alongside the subdued electric guitar, which allows the song to breathe a bit. It's like you're letting the player reflect on their experience with the game up to now, without hitting the brakes to do so. Following this, the chorus continues to build intensity, finally utilizing power chords and the lead guitar mimicking the melody from the vocal version of the song, before transitioning to a heavier bridge that feels like the most logical choice in pushing the energy even further. Now, here's the thing. Beyond this point, the song could run the risk of getting progressively heavier and more distorted to the point where it could just keep building to no end, until the melody is completely overshadowed by the established groove. So, how did Shoji-san mitigate this? Well, he reels the song back just a bit by adding in another chorus, but stacking a harmony on top of the lead. Because of this, while the instrumental isn't technically getting heavier, it still feels like we're progressing down a sensible evolutionary path, which is then doubled down via an outro that is effectively an embellished arrangement of the one that started the song. So, by the end, we're left with a track that forms a perfect circle, effectively becoming an infinite victory lap for everyone currently showing their resolve on top of the Millennium Tower. As I said before, this track doesn't have as much going on as a song like Fly, but sometimes simplicity has its benefits, and this is coming from someone whose favorite band writes 20+ minute long songs on a regular basis. If songs like The Assassination of Bodhisattva are Yakuza's takes at proggy compositions, then For Faith is their take on something like Metallica's Black Album, a track that might be safe in concept, but amps up the excitement in the biggest audience with ease. I've tried keeping this initial play-by-play rather simplistic this time round, without delving into music theory. But that aside, there is one more thing we need to cover when discussing the overall nature of For Faith. Everything I've listed up to now can just boil down to this track being a well-structured rock song, and Yakuza has a multitude of such songs in its catalog. So, is there something else that makes For Faith stand out from the rest? Well, yeah, and it relates to the 3 other boss themes that preceded its use in the finale. One of the reasons why people tend to say that Yakuza 4 had 4 final bosses instead of 1 is the presentation behind the last remaining fights. Each protagonist is given their own one-on-one to conclude their personal arc in the game. Each boss is given a unique dynamic intro, and most importantly, for the purposes of this particular video, they all technically have their own boss theme. Admittedly, they are but alternate takes on the final track, using specific musical elements and invoked emotions to guide the final piece into different directions that may not have been fully explored within For Faith itself. But due to the way they were all implemented, the collection of the last boss themes in Yakuza 4 almost makes them feel like self-sufficient movements of a grander musical piece. And if we observe them from that perspective, then the final track among them serves a dual purpose. It can be perceived as the grand finale of the larger composition, including the other 3 boss themes, but it can also be perceived as a best of type of expression, taking the strongest elements of all the songs that led up to it. So, continuing off this train of thought, what's the nature of the other For Faith-related tracks? Well, let's take a brief look at each of them. Arais, to put it simply, is a blend of old-school and then modern Yakuza soundscapes. It starts off with a menacing atmosphere thanks to the notable string accents, feeling reminiscent of the more ambitious tracks from Yakuza's PS2 era, but then transitions into more open and anthemic expressions by the time the chorus hits, thanks to that section having little to no percussion, but adding in basically everything else in its instrumental. The perfect clash of the old and the new, befitting Arai's character arc quite well. Kido's, on the other hand, is brimming with youthful energy, arguably being the most rock-driven track of this quadrilogy of sorts. The percussion is very prominent and focuses more so on impact, rather than building a particularly menacing atmosphere. We have an opening and main section that is consistent and powerful, then it fades out in the middle, and then comes back to the energy of the initial main section before abruptly cutting off. Again, it fits the associated character quite well, when you remember his chase section and the final fight against Saejima played out. Plus, it's also the shortest of the 4 final themes, which makes sense considering the disparity in strength between Kido and Taiga. Moving on to Daigo, there really is only one word that could define his own boss theme: tragic. This song is predominantly piano-driven, with echoing simplistic guitar leads in the background. It's essentially what you'd expect from a track like Fly at the very end, but stretched out to a larger section of the composition. Once it reaches its latter half though, it shows signs of blending the menacing nature of Arai's boss theme with the aggression of Kido's, before the song once again fades to its signature tragic undertones. For a character as conflicted and overburdened as Daigo was, in the grand scheme of things, they couldn't have chosen a better song to carry his fight. And lastly, we reach Munakata, a character that is probably the best example of a journey being more important than its destination, as here we have a track that better befits the Yakuza 4 in this chapter than the last corrupt man standing. It's emblematic of a personal journey reaching a definitive peak, as this is the moment when Tanimura takes a stand for what his father once stood for, and what a number of good officers he crossed paths with did before they were corrupted by Munakata. In the context of this specific boss fight, it's a declaration of one's personal justice to the current emblem of the bastardized iteration of the concept, and makes for the best send-off to Tanimura's time in the spotlight. So yeah, all the tracks here are really cool. But I know that a number of people will have clicked on this video for a different reason. It's not always about serious deconstructions and intriguing symbolism. Sometimes it's more so about the memes, the entertaining lyrics, the selfish deeds, and so on. Granted, the lyrics to For Faith are a bit harder to present in the same way as its instrumentals, but even from their, for lack of a better word, fractured nature, you can draw up your own conclusion on the symbolism of the song. Perhaps it's about the lyricist taking a greater stance, not just for the sake of self-actualization or the act of petty revenge, but for the pursuit of a just cause. The aforementioned outcomes may all be tangential benefits of the protagonist's actions, but they are just that, tangential. The important thing isn't to merely reach the end, it's to keep going, walking ahead with pride to the next stage. Or at least that's my interpretation of it. With all of that said, let me know what you love about For Faith, whether it be its instrumental, the lyrics, or something I hadn't even gone over in this specific analysis. Even if you just love the song for the unity it instills in the more carefree side of our community, by all means, speak your mind. Thank you for your time today, and I hope this video gave you a newfound enjoyment of this classic Yakuza track. If there are any other topics you would like to see me cover, once again, let me know in the comments. And with that, we shall conclude today's presentation. So, until next time, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Cheers!